Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome all you citizens of the world. I'm Michael James, and it's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. You can reach us anytime at livefromtheheartlandshow@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you, particularly if you would like to make a little donation to keep this show supported. We would appreciate it greatly. We have a good lineup today. We're going to have our ongoing political commentator who's been around for a long time, the one and only Don Rose. And then another no stranger to this show is Kathy Kelly, longtime peace activist, and she has a new piece out in the Progressive magazine titled Go Tell It on the Mountain, Genocide is Wrong, talking about Gaza. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of a few people. One of our sports commentators, Gordon Thompson, longtime coach in track and field at Loyola, at DePaul, and a number of other places, including the U.S. Olympic team. His mom passed away, and she was really a wonderful woman, Ann McMillan Thompson. She's the grandmother to a number of NFL coaches and staff members. Gordon's sister was a hotshot track person, as was Gordon. And I met his mom, Ann McMillan Thompson, a couple of years back, and she really was a nice person. Sorry to learn of her passing. Here in Chicago, Phil Upchurch, wonderful musician, has passed away. He was born in July of 1941 here in Chicago. He worked with the Cool Gents, the Dells, the Spaniels, Curtis Mayfield, Otis Rush, Jimmy Reed, and later on with Woody Herman, Stan Getz, Groove Holmes, B.B. King, and Dizzy Gillespie. Phil Church appears in the movie Stony Island, and it's a scene that I'm in, and we're going to run a picture of that, and if we can get a clip, we will. I played a really nasty window washer who goes into the recording studio where he's playing away. And on another passing, the one and only Steve Cropper, songwriter, producer, legendary guitarist, Memphis. He worked with Booker T and the MGs, Stack Records, etc. He and Phil were both 84, and we're sorry to see them go. And lastly, I'd like to say happy birthday to my dad, Hal James, the Broadway producer who would have been 114. He was born in St. Joseph, Missouri. He was raised in Chicago, went to New York to be an actor, became an ad man, and ended up producing Broadway plays. Some good things. We are recording today on the 10th, and that is the 10th of December, and it is World Human Rights Day. We'll see how that plays up given what we have going on in the United States in our presidential situation. Another good thing was, just saw it on my phone, a judge ruled that the National Guard deployment in Los Angeles must end immediately. Bad things, lots of those. Had to choose a few. The Education Department officially has killed the Biden-era student loan repayment plan. And there's a bunch of ads on TV all of a sudden, really kind of putting our Mayor Brandon Johnson in a negative position. It's from Common Ground Collective Chicago. And it's a guy named Chuck Swirsky who worked with the Board of Education at one time. It's clearly a conservative outfit, and they're running a lot of ads. Apparently, they raised a lot of money. Another really horrific thing was today in the news. Dozens have been denied the oath of allegiance opportunity, the final step in their naturalization ceremony. This all happened in Indianapolis. People were notified as they were arriving to be sworn in as U.S. citizens, and that can't happen because they're from the wrong countries. Kind of a mess we have going on. Okay, we're going to take a very short musical break, and we'll be back with our first guest. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial for Live from the Heartland for the week of December 12th, the year 2025. back to Live from the Heartland for the week of December 12th. And I'm here with Don Rose, who's our longtime contributor, a fellow who is really up on what's going on in politics. And we're so grateful that he shares his time with us at least once a month. And there's a lot we could talk about, things on the electoral front, gerrymandering of races, etc. How's the president doing? Does he have dementia? Who's making decisions? Venezuela and the boat strikes. A lot of things to talk about. Where do you want to go with first, Don?
Well, they're all worthy of going with. What I do want to bring out is the fact that we're worried about the killing of those two survivors. I think we've killed 84, 85 people in 24 boat bombings, all of which are dubiously legal. But the one that is attracting the most attention is a second bombing on what appeared to be a couple of survivors of one of the boats allegedly carrying drugs. Now, we don't know, first of all, whether any of these boats were carrying drugs. They may well have. There's some cocaine coming through there. But it's all what they're telling us right now, and we have no proof. Now, the worst thing about dropping bombs on two survivors is that this is a violation of the rules of war. And it turns out that our Secretary of, he calls himself the Secretary of War, who's still technically the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, at an earlier speech to the military, which we may remember a couple of months ago, disdained the rules of engagement. He called them stupid. He wants to get rid of them. He calls them woke. He calls them politically correct. All of these are historically, some of them go back many, many years. The rules of engagement are things that made warfare slightly more civil. It involves not killing prisoners of war. It involves not murdering civilians in the course of your war. Of course, civilians do die, usually as on the side, but and we have in the past targeted civilians, but that's something we try to get rid of. It's something we were blaming Israel for horrendously. So Hegseth, in effect, says we're not going to pay any attention to the rules of engagement, and therefore he drops the bomb on these two struggling people with a capsized boat. Now, they give all kinds of crazy interpretations that these people who are gesticulating for some kind of salvation were giving secret messages to their own kind to come rescue them, which would be open them up for attack. Or they say that they're trying to right the boat and save the cocaine, all of which is total nonsense. Now, this is just one little aspect of what is the worse and larger crime, this bombing of now, 20-some boats and killing nearly 100 people with absolutely no military justification. Trump has declared that we are in a war with the drug cartels, and we're trying to save Americans. Well, the fact is, American lives are being lost to fentanyl, but fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. There's something going on with Venezuela. It certainly has a dictator who might well be replaced, but what is our excuse for going in? Are we going to go in? Are we just going to keep bombing little boats? Are we going to eventually bomb the land, as Trump says? Are we going to invade? This whole business around Venezuela puts us at the brink of war, and we don't know where it's going. Now, Maduro, the head of Venezuela, the president, thinks it's that Trump is after their oil. They have very large oil reserves, the largest in that area. And I suspect that's where the bottom line is. But are we going to actually engage in a war? Are we going to start a war? Are we going to go try to cut some kind of deal for regime change, or just cut some kind of deal for their oil? This is a very, very precarious and dangerous situation. That's the one that's bothering me the most right now. This woman, Maria Machado, got the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. And she is the opposition, the person the U.S. has been backing. And I think her daughter got the prize from her. She didn't show up for it. I also had a couple of things that I came across. One was, most cocaine coming to the United States was still coming out of Colombia, not Venezuela. Venezuela is simply on the pathway. The other thing was there's another mineral, not the oil, which is a heavier kind of crude, I think. I saw a guy saying, who was an oil man from Texas, but clearly a progressive, talking about some other mineral that Venezuela had, as well as Greenland had, and that's one of the things Trump's after. I'll try to get more info on that. Let's talk a little bit about politics, and it's all political or all influenced by politics. But we did have an election in Miami for mayor. And Eileen Higgins, the first non-Latino in many years, won the race. The Democrat won. First Democrat in 40 years. Yeah, that was good. I can feel that like I could go to Miami again. That's just another landmark on the way. We had, it wasn't a victory, but it was a very, very a great reduction in the vote, in the MAGA vote in Tennessee was coming close. We've won, except for that Tennessee vote, we've won and shown tremendous narrowing of the vote all the way through, which reinforces a view I think I've expressed here and before, that we are on the way. We're on the way to winning the midterms, certainly the House, and with Trump's numbers as low as they are, some of them in the high 30s, 36, 38, it would certainly tend to put the Senate in play, which we couldn't have thought of a year ago. The idea of the Senate being in play was out of the question. The problem is he's got damn near a year and look at all the damage he's done in less than a year. So although the long-range outlook is good, we're still stuck with this lunatic, and we don't know where he's going to take us, and he could take us into some very dangerous territory.
Yeah, well, we're going to see about that. Hopefully we will resist enough. What's your take on some of the Senate races and things going on? I know in Texas, a congresswoman has now, I'm blocking her name, she's going to run for Senate against this young Christian Democrat that's been in the news. Any take on...
Crockett is her name.
Yeah.
Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah, so do you got any sense of what's going on in Maine or some other places that were supposed to be close?
Well, I think they're leaning in our direction all the way around. Now, I can't talk to Texas. Texas keeps getting closer and closer. I don't know whether this is finally the time. It depends in part on who wins the Republican primary. They have a very controversial and very bad guy who's the attorney general running against the longtime incumbent there. If he wins, there may be enough disdain for him to give Crockett an opening. I think that's what she's counting on. That's why she went in, giving up a
safe house,
a house she owned.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the Supreme Court just okayed the Texas gerrymandered district map, and I don't know if there'll be any challenge to that now. But in Missouri, I look at this newspaper called the Missouri Independent, and it comes every day. Missouri set to enact gerrymandered map despite 300,000 signatures for a repeal referendum. The campaign to repeal Missouri's gerrymandered congressional map turned in 300,000 signatures on Tuesday, the 9th, to put it on the 2026 ballot. But Secretary of State Denny Hoskins says they won't stop the map from going into effect on Thursday, which is on the 11th. A dramatic break from precedent that will undoubtedly set off another legal fight.
Well, I don't know how it's all going to settle out. One or two of these states that are trying to gerrymander with the okay of the Supreme Court, basically. I will concede that between the Democratic redistrictings and the Republican redistrictings, if most of them go as planned, and I don't know why they won't, one or two states may balk. This will give the Republicans, 3 to 5 more possibilities, but the tide is going against them. And I think, for example, Texas may not get 5 new seats out of it. They may wind up with only 3 because the Latino vote is going back to the Democrats, as it should have. So my feeling is that, I can't make this a prediction now, but my sense is that as of today, if the midterms were held, the Democrats would hold the House by at least 20 seats. So I believe we were going to overcome whatever the gerrymandering, whatever advantage the gerrymandering that's going on now will bring the Republicans. It's not enough to overcome what I think is going to be a blue tide.
I hope you're right. I got a couple more things. You want to make any comments on the president's mental state? Robert Reich on Trump talks about him having dementia. And I'm curious to know why the media is so timid on, they reported everything, every little misstep that Biden made, but not doing so with Trump.
Well, they want to stay in Trump's good graces. There's no question that many of Trump's ravings, that's all you can call them, are so bizarre that they suggest a deteriorated mind at work. Now, I've always felt he's had a deteriorated mind all the way along. Can we medicalize everything that's wrong with this guy? He may have some physical disabilities. They always hide, they always hide his condition, whatever it is, by saying he's in perfect health, the most perfect health of any president in modern history, et cetera, et cetera. There is no question that, he'll be 80 soon. He will have some shortcomings. I've got my shortcomings at 95, but I think my brain is still working so that I can speak rationally. Trump has always spoken so irrationally, it's hard to figure him out. And, is he ultimately going to have some kind of overt breakdown the way poor Biden did in the middle of that debate? All we can do is wait for it. Is he going to have a heart attack? Is he going to have this or that? I know many people are waiting for some sign of more massive deterioration than we've got. But right now we're all speculating, and with good cause to speculate. But what can we say? They're certainly not going to disqualify him under the 25th Amendment. They don't dare make such a move, and that even if they start to do it, it eventually winds up where the cabinet has to take a vote. So I'm not too optimistic about him destroying himself, as it were.
Well, we can only hope.
We can only hope.
Let me ask you one more thing. Now I'm going to go a little more local on this. Any thoughts on the Illinois Senate race? The race for the nominee for the U.S. Senate to replace Durbin. And I've been watching on TV these ads that are really negative ads about Brandon Johnson, and they're coming from an outfit called Common Ground Collective, fighting for Chicago and Illinois. Join us, and then it tells you how. And there's a guy named Chuck Swirsky involved. It's not the Chuck Swirsky who is attached to the Bulls basketball team. It's another guy who worked at the Board of Ed and probably has worked for some more conservative Democratic people in Congress. Any thoughts on that? Have you seen these ads?
I've seen the ads and wondered why they're running so early. Yeah. I don't know if they're representing a candidate or they're just trying to generally soften him up. Of course, he's in trouble enough without those ads. Now, on the Senate, the one that concerns me is Krishnamurthy. It was recently shown that he had taken money from MAGA people. But what's concerned me even more about Krishnamurthy is he's been extremely close to Modi in India. And he's been supportive, and he's taken a lot of money from Modi supporters. So I don't think this is a healthy relationship. He's otherwise, spoken out against Trump well. So my support at the moment, I haven't made a formal endorsement, would be toward Juliana Stratton, who eventually will have the money to get on the air. My fear is that with all the money, the millions and millions that Krishnamurti has collected from good and bad sources, he may be too far ahead. But I think he is the one to beat. He should be beat. And Stratton seems the more likely to defeat him. Although, as another black woman, Robin Kelly in there will take some votes away.
Well, Don, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. And hopefully you'll be back with us next month. Everybody else, stay tuned. We'll be right back with a little bit more of Live from the Heartland for the week of December 12th.
I got so down in trouble, I nearly lost my head. I started waking every morning, filled with sadness, fear, and dread. The world I took for granted was crashing to the ground.
Okay, you citizens of the world, welcome back to the second segment of Live from the Heartland for December 12th. And our next guest is no stranger to the show. It's the one and only Kathy Kelly. She's from Voices in the Wilderness. And a little bit I got off of Wikipedia. It says that Kathy is an American peace activist, pacifist, and author, one of the founding members of Voices in the Wilderness, and until the campaign closed in 2020, a coordinator of Voices for Creative Nonviolence. As part of a peace team work in several countries, she's traveled to Iraq 26 times, and I'll go on and just say she's also been to Gaza a number of times, is not allowed to go back because she tried to bring in supplies. And with all that said, good day to you, Kathy Kelly.
Well, hello, Mike, and thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Hal, for producing. And it sure is an important time to, I think along with so many other people across the country, wake up every morning thinking what can be done with regard to Gaza, because we're in the country that's provisioning Israel with the weapons and the capacity to starve people, forcibly displace them, maim them, kill their journalists and their healthcare workers, poison their water, attack people in the West Bank. It's genocide. And Mike, when you and I were young, probably one of the biggest horrors we ever grappled with was the Holocaust. How ever in the world could people in Germany have lived alongside the Nazis or tolerated any of the death camps? And I remember thinking, well, I would never have been a bystander. But here we are watching a genocide on our screens. And so it's something our country is so very, very complicit in. And I guess one of the most important things is not to let it slip out of the news, not to go back to page 8 of the New York Times. It should be page 1 every day of every newspaper.
Do you think the media is giving this any of the attention it deserves, or?
Well, it's difficult, I'll admit, because Israel won't let the media come in. They have once, in fact, just today, the Israeli Supreme Court, more or less, said, okay, we'll give you another extension before you're going to have to let international journalists in. So, but that's still no excuse, because the Palestinian journalists, 260 of whom have been murdered, have still been willing to say, we will not be silent. And they're still reporting. So the reports can go forth. That Drop Site News with Jeremy Scahill, very brave outfit. They're putting reports up all the time, and Al Jazeera, and various, not so much in the mainstream, but reliable sources are telling the stories of what's happening inside of Gaza. And
let me just jump in and say that people could really get a lot of information on a number of topics if they go to Al Jazeera. It's free. It's online. You can get it if you have internet TV too. And it is a wonderful source of news.
I agree. And, one of the things that's happening right now is that, it's the old divide and conquer. And Israel is so skilled at dividing, division after division, wall after wall. And so now Gaza has been divided into basically East Gaza and West Gaza. So the East is right along the coastline. It's the Mediterranean. Of course, the fisher people aren't allowed to sail out into the sea, and people certainly aren't going to beaches. Over 2 million people are crammed into an area that's uninhabitable. It's so poisoned already, and they're living amid rubble, and diseases are rampant.
And floods. There's like all these rains going on right now.
And winter is coming. More storms are due. So people are living in tents or makeshift sorts of places with a plastic tarp over poles. And if they are getting food, quite often the food that gets in is like junk food or cigarettes, but not the nutrients that they need. And the nutrients they need are in trucks backed up. The UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Association, and other UN groups say, we could feed people, just let us in. But the division is such that in West Gaza, that's where the Israeli Defense Forces have their sort of newly built barracks and offices and equipment. And the only supply trucks being allowed in are going to West Gaza. And also living in West Gaza are about 300 mercenary soldiers. These are Palestinians who said, okay, we'll work for the Israelis. And formerly, they were part of gangs that were looting some of the trucks that were trying to go in and bring supplies. And so Israel is apparently going to try to partner with the United States and build a kind of a Potemkin village, like a facade that says, oh, look how well things are going. Here's this new building. Here's a tree. Here's a garden. But meanwhile, the people that are trapped in East Gaza are probably going to become so desperate that what the Israelis hope is that they'll say, please get us out of here. Send us somewhere. We can't live. We can't subject our children to this. And at the same time, now, Israel is further dividing what we call the West Bank. Gaza is separated from the West Bank, and the West Bank has been carved into little Bantustans. Remember, Mike, when you were campaigning with regard to South Africa, and we said, no, we don't want to accept Bantustans, little small villages that are separated. We want a place that's contiguous, that's, represents the people who live there. Well, the West Bank is being divided and carved and made unlivable. And some of the people that are quite organized are also quite young. In fact, you have to really ask if some might not be child soldiers. They're like 15, 16-year-olds. And they're called the Hilltop Youth. And the Hilltop Youth are so named because Ariel Sharon, a prime minister of Israel back in 1954, said, we will seize the hilltops. We'll get the upper strategic heights, and from there, we'll turn Palestine into Swiss cheese. And that's what's happening. Bedouin encampments, small villages, smaller cities are being pounced upon, descended upon by people who come from the higher areas, and they literally drive their flocks right into the homes of Palestinians who are terrified. And then they steal the Palestinian flocks and they torch cars and they block off roads. And many of these settlers are wearing police uniforms or military uniforms. Although if you're a settler, you're actually exempt from joining the Israeli military because they say, look, we're the ones who are defending this country. So it should not be the case that AIPAC can bully United States elected officials into continued support for a genocidal, human rights violating government. But that's the case. AIPAC has still got a vice-like grip on very, very many of the congresspeople and senators in the United States. And certainly as elections are coming up, for instance, Raja Krishnamurti would like to take Senator Dick Durbin's place. Well, I think Raja Krishnamurti's got to quit taking AIPAC money if he wants to take that place. And I would say the same of people who are in competition with Raja Krishnamurti. Everybody ought to look at that campaign very carefully and ask how much AIPAC money have the candidates taken and how subservient have the candidates been to AIPAC, to Israel.
Yeah, we had Don Rose on earlier, and we did talk a little bit about the Senate race and about Raja Krishnamurti taking money also from MAGA people. We'll see. I mean, it's bad enough taking money from AIPAC, and I don't know if Stratton is also taking money from AIPAC.
Stratton has been a very subservient person in terms of service to Israel's demands.
Those are the two front candidates. Are there any candidates that you know of for the U.S.
Robin
Senate?
Kelly might be a little bit better. She had not taken any money from AIPAC until very recently. Now, that's a very bad time to be taking money from AIPAC very recently. But up until February of 2025, she hadn't taken AIPAC money.
Tell our listeners a little bit on AIPAC, like a sentence or two, what they are.
So, in response to the Holocaust and all of the horror that caused, people in Israel and outside of Israel said, we've got to protect ourselves. We've got to build up such a bulwark of protection that this will never happen again. And what they did was build the American-Israeli political action committees. And, no one wants to say, well, we'd like to see another Holocaust. But what these committees have done is forced U.S. politicians to either accept whatever policies the Israeli government, the Knesset, wants to make. And if they don't accept, the AIPAC now has so much power, they can say, okay, then we're going to back your opponent and you can kiss your political career goodbye. And AIPAC has also gone to the universities and pretty much said the same to chancellors and hedge funds and powerful people within universities. They've compromised many of the pillars of society within the United States. There's kind of a face-off with a lot of the labor union movement. Like, for instance, you have that amazing young labor activist, Chris Smalls, out in New Jersey, saying, look, I'm going to organize Amazon laborers and we're going to oppose AIPAC and I'm going to get on that flotilla and try to sail right on into Gaza. So he's somebody to contend with. And there are others. There are some celebrities now that are saying, you know what, maybe the answer is to free Marwan Barghouti. Some regard him as the Nelson Mandela of Palestine. In fact, they launched a campaign to free him from Nelson Mandela's cell in Robbins Island because they wanted to make that point that he's somebody who could unify Palestinians. And Palestinians need unifying leadership because and I think with the help of Israel, they've become very, very divided. Fatah is divided from Hamas, and Fatah and Hamas are sometimes divided from the Palestinian NGO groupings. But non-governmental organizations. But it does seem like maybe Marwan Barghouti, he's serving a sentence of 5 lifetime prison sentences. But he may be somebody who could unify the different groups. And even some of the most ardent Zionists have said, yeah, let that guy out. We need him as a voice to try to move forward and get beyond the impasse that we're in, because you certainly couldn't say that Israel has eliminated Hamas. There are 20,000 Hamas fighters that are still there.
Yeah, it seems like it's still continuing. That, I was going to ask you about, okay, all of a sudden there was peace in Gaza, supposedly, and clearly there isn't, and what's going on. And I just want to make a note here before I forget. You mentioned Nelson Mandela. And this fellow, who pronounce his name one more time, who is maybe the Mandela of Palestine?
Yeah, Marwan Barghouti.
Marwan Barghouti.
M-A-R-W-A-N, yeah.
Well, I have been to that prison cell where they initiated the campaign on Robbins Island. I was there in 2014 or 15, took a 13-mile boat ride out there, and I have a photograph of his prison cell, a number of them. It was pretty moving. Let's go back to the flotilla that you mentioned. You were involved in a few of these flotillas, and most recently we saw some really put together efforts to try to get to the shores, and I'm not sure if any of the boats made it or not. What can you tell us, Kathy?
Well, I regard it as the miracle on the Mediterranean. None of those boats made it to the Gazan shore, although some of the fishermen were able to go out and catch fish because the Israelis were so preoccupied trying to stop the flotilla. But what they did accomplish was amazing. 40 different countries were part of that effort, and people spoke different languages. They had different political views. They had all kinds of different logistical expectations. They managed to coordinate a brilliant forward-moving flotilla and full of humanitarian supplies. They had nonviolence trainings overnight on the boats. They managed to have consensus decision-making. I've never seen anything like it. And when it first started, people were saying they're never going to get enough money to pull this off. Well, they got the funding as well. And they just had in Ireland a lengthy meeting to try to figure out, okay, what next? But the other thing that's exciting is that along with Chris Smalls, the labor leader from New Jersey, Greta Thunberg was on those boats. And when people say, who will lead the militant young people in working for peace? You couldn't ask for a better leader than Greta Thunberg. She's got everything it takes. And then there were also people like Phil Tottenham of Veterans for Peace. And I was with him when he declared, okay, I'm going to do a 40-day fast in New York City. And by golly, he did all 40 days. Yours truly had to end at 36 days. But yeah, he's the real deal. And so there are many young groups, at least they're half my age, who are coming together on the issue of ending a genocide and getting the relief into people who are starving still and desperate for relief.
Kathy Kelly, talk a little bit about international support or lack thereof for Israel. You mentioned Ireland and a meeting that took place there. I say most of the world is opposed to what Israel is doing with the backing of the U.S. But clearly there are places that are still supportive of Israel, as well as places that are starting to lean on Israel to give it up, so to speak.
Well, certainly in Ireland, there are groups every week out campaigning. And Catherine Connolly, who is now the president of Ireland, is quite left-leaning and very strong on saying the genocide must end. Mary Robinson, a former president of Ireland, is the chairperson of the elders, and she's got a strong voice. But gosh darn it, Shannon Airport is being used every day to send more weapons and more soldiers over to Israel or to support Israel's wars against Lebanon, against Syria, against Yemen. And so Ireland has a lot of work yet to do. And I think, you're so right. People have turned out in the millions in capitals around the world, but at the United Nations, not a single country stood up for Gaza. Not Russia, not China, not any of the Arab countries. They all sat on their haunches and watched while the Trump so-called peace plan went through. And, in a way, I think, how sometimes you say, I want to hear some peace and quiet in this room, tell those kids to cut down the racket. Well, that's what Trump wanted. He didn't want peace. He wanted quiet. He wanted it to look like he had really made some gains and strides, but you can't see it. It's dismal and doomed as far as we can see. And they want quiet because they don't want people to pay attention any longer. So, I think Chicago was pretty exemplary with the ICE scandals and raids and invasion. They paid attention big time and made headway. Or even now, the church that has the sign, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph aren't here. ICE came and they're in hiding. We have to keep pushing for that kind of attentiveness. Don't look away. It's a very bad time to look away from Gaza or the West Bank. Very important time to keep listening to the Gazan spokespeople, to the people with CARE in the Chicago area. That's the Islamic organization. And then also Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid and Muslim TV News. Those are people that are still speaking very vociferously and clearly.
What would be your current assessment of the so-called peace plan, and what do you really think Israel and the U.S. want to do in the future for Gaza?
Well, I think they want real estate in the future. I think they've got their, they believe in eyes on the prize, and to them the prize is that coastline and the natural gas and being able to control the farmland, the very beautiful farmland that could be growing olive trees and fruits. And I think the peace plan is unlikely to succeed because their demands are sort of fantasy demands. So you can't tell everybody in Hamas, okay, give up your weapons and we're going to continue to bomb you and imprison you and torture you. But you also have to give up your weapons so that you have no means to defend. Now, I'm going to stick with pacifism. I think people are better off defending themselves through nonviolent means. But the Trump plan had no plan whatsoever. And by saying to the United Nations Relief and Works Organization, you have to disband, you can't have any role. Well, those are the people who know how to distribute the goods. And so there was much that was anybody within the actual delivery of relief circles could immediately say, this isn't going to work. This is a non-starter. And I think Francesca Albanese is the person I would listen to, or Craig Mokhiber, a former human rights UN official, a pretty high-level official. And they have both said it's an unworkable criminal plan that's meant to continue a genocide, a slower genocide, but a genocide.
Kathy Kelly, this past week you gave a talk in D.C., I believe, hosted by the JFK Peace Speech Committee. Give us a little quickie on what you talked about.
Well, JFK's speech ought to be revisited again and again, and this committee does that once a month. And what I wanted to emphasize was that JFK said all of the countries have to be represented. He really, in fact, that same month that he gave that speech, he went over to Ireland and addressed the Irish Parliament. And he said to them, the most important thing you can do is work for peace. And I think that he was, in a sense, sowing the seeds for his own assassination, because he came out so vigorously in favor of an end to demonization of the Soviet Union. He said, they're not perfect, we're not perfect, but stop demonizing. And so, now we have to stop demonizing China, stop demonizing Russia, stop, pulling the relics of the Cold War out of the dustbin of history and perpetrating a new Cold War. It doesn't make any sense. We're facing ecological collapse. How will we deal with it if we don't learn how to collaborate?
Give us a couple of words of encouragement as we go out that you might suggest people listen to and perhaps follow.
Follow the young people. They got slammed. They got slammed by their own universities on campuses across this country, but they haven't disappeared. So I'd say keep your eye on Greta Thunberg, and in Chicago, keep your eye on the students who I believe will continue their idealism. But we don't know exactly what form it will take. And also the organizers at Broadview who took risks and told the ICE folks bye-bye. Those are people to follow and embrace and welcome. And then we'll feel, I think, as though Christmas has some meaning to it.
Kathy Kelly, thanks so much. You're the best. It's always great having you come on. Everybody else, I know you enjoyed this show. If you want to check out last week's show, we had the lawyer Flint Taylor talking about Fred Hampton, who was assassinated on December 4th, 56 years ago. We also had Gabe Gonzalez from Protect Rogers Park. I want to encourage all of you to stay in touch with us. We have a pretty new email. It's live from the Heartland Show at Gmail. And it would be wonderful if you wanted to make a donation, contact us. This show, we do have to pay the engineer. And we also would love to hear from you if you have something you would like us to share, or perhaps you would like to come on the show. So that's live from the Heartland Show at gmail.com. And I want to encourage you all to keep doing good in the world. All the work that you do, that I do, that Hal does, that Kathy does, that Don Rose does, that all of us do. Together we make a difference. So keep it up. All power to the people. Over and out till next week.
She can. Over the mountain.
Thank you for watching the
Under
Live from
the
the
big blue
Heartland
sky,
Show.
you got a dream
New episodes
awaiting.
air every Friday
I
beginning
can
at 9
see
a.m.
it
Central
in your
Time.
eye. It may
Episodes
not
air
come
each following Thursday on
easy,
CAN
but
TV,
you know
9
you've
p.m.
got a friend.
Sweet Home Chicago.
I'll
on
be
Channel
by your
21,
side the
or
entire
streaming
ride.
everywhere
Just
else
let me
at
hear you say
cantv.org.
amen. Are you doing?
Audio episodes go live on WLUW
Are you
Saturday
doing
9
the
a.m.
best you
on
can?
the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM, or streaming
Tell
everywhere
me, are you
worldwide
doing?
at WLUW.org.
Doing? Are you doing the best you
They're
can?
available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at
Too
lumpenradio.com.
done. Est-ce que
I'm
tu
Michael
donnes
James, and I'm glad to have
le
been your
meilleur
host.
de toi-même?
Until next time,
Si tu
remember,
l'aimes.
do good in the world because the world needs
Tu
all the good that you do, that I
Est-ce
do,
que
that
tu
we
donnes
do together. All
le
power
meilleur
to the
de
people.
toi-même?
Over and out.
Quand tu l'aimes, are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing?